Hi everyone, today I'm here to tell you the story of the Savage Mistress. This story is about a lady by the name of Delphine Laurie, who was born on the 19th of March 1787 in New Orleans to a very wealthy and well-known and respected family in her local community. Her uncle was the governor of the Spanish-American provinces of Louisiana and Florida during 1785 to 1791, and her cousin was mayor of New Orleans from 1815 to 1820. Delphine was actually known for her looks, and people said that she was very beautiful, although looking at the state of her from what I've seen in her photos of her, people's standards of beauty back then was very low. So Delphine was actually married 3 times. She was married to her first husband, who was a high-ranking royal soldier. His name was Don Ramel de Lopez y Alango, and then her second husband, he was a pirate. I am Yapti. His name was Jean Blanique. Then her third husband was named Leonardo Louis Nicholas Laluli, and he was a dentist who suddenly decided that he'd have a career change from being a dentist to trying to find a cure for hunchbacks, which is one hell of a career change. But apparently back then people could just change their career to whenever they wanted, to whatever they wanted. She was very popular. Her and her husband, and when they got married, moved into a big, nice, posh, fancy house in the centre of New Orleans, and they were very well liked. Delphine was very popular. She had lots of friends, and everyone was convinced that her and her husband were both very nice people. But then turns out later on you will find that they were not. So the story kind of starts about Delphine and her slaves that she had, because back then rich kind of people had slaves, and a lot of these people were from Africa, and they were taken and forced from their villages in Africa to work for, and then taken to America and forced to work for people and be their slaves. So Delphine had slaves in her house, and it says that she didn't really like slaves, and the reason for that is because that during the slave uprisings in Africa, when slaves were fighting for their freedom, that one of her uncles was actually killed during the uprising, and this is why she didn't like slaves. So Delphine really didn't like her slaves, She really badly mistreated them. The rules were that you could punish your slaves, and this sounds mental, but apparently the most you could do with them is hit them with whips and chains, which, oh yes, sounds so pleasant and lovely. Who wants to be whipped by whips and chains? So apparently that was it. That was all you could do with them, but obviously she's done a lot more to her slaves than that, because we wouldn't be talking about just her if she was just another person that hit our slaves with whips and chains. So apparently she used to really badly abuse the slaves, hit them, beat them, punish them. One time there was a little girl about 13, 14, and she was brushing Delphine's hair, and she caught a tug on Delphine's hair, and then Delphine went bloody ballistic and started screaming and shouting at her, and the wee lassie ran away, and she chased and then Delphine chased her onto the roof of the house, and then the wee lassie slid and fell, and then she died. Also, what happened was that her husband used to torture the slaves. He would take a lot of the slaves and use them for his medical experiments, and someone found one of the neighbours was kind of being nosy and was spying on Delphine, and she noticed that one of the she noticed Delphine kicking and punching one of the slaves in our garden one day. So then the neighbour reported Delphine to the neighbour reported Delphine to the local authorities, who were in charge of managing the slaves and stuff, and making sure that the slave masters were only just hitting their slaves with whips and chains. So the neighbour reported Delphine to them, and they came into the house and took away a large amount of proportions of the slaves away. But unfortunately for the slaves, not much support was really given for them. All that really happened was they went back onto the slave market to be sold to someone else. And one of Delphine's uncles went to the slave market and then bought all the slaves back and then took them back to Delphine. So the slaves they thought that they'd escaped that nightmare when the authorities took them away, but they ended up getting sold in the market for cattle to someone else, and then that someone else to buy them, and they thought that they were getting away from Delphine, only to find out that they ended up back in our house again. The granny of the wee lassie that died, that fell from the roof, she decided then that she had had enough, and she kicked an uproar about Delphine and about the way that she was treating them, and Delphine chained her to the kitchen floor. All the slaves that lived in that house were terrified from Delphine. They used to shiver every time that she walked next to them. And then she always put like a nice up front, so she'd always like pretend to be really nice like in front of all her friends and stuff, but really in real life she wasn't nice at all. And act like that she didn't know what was going on and that she was concerned and stuff, and she would like say to them, "Oh, are you alright? Oh, what's wrong?" and stuff like that, when really she like knew what was going on and she was part of the reason why all this was happening. And basically, so the old lady that got chained to the kitchen, she had enough. So she decided one day when she was working in the kitchen that she'd set fire to the kitchen to set awareness of it all. Unfortunately though, the poor old lady died in the fire and perished in the fire. And what the fire did exactly what it was meant to do, it like raised awareness to it all. Then a group of people came in with like knives and pitchforks and that, and when they found out what was going on, and they stormed into our house and broke into the house, and then they were going through the house with like knives and pitchforks, and they were going up to the top room in the basement, and one of the slaves went up to them and was like, "Don't go into that room, don't go into that room. People go into that room and they don't come back down." And they stormed in past him into the room, and what they found was one of the most horrendous sights. They found slaves had been tortured, cut up into pieces, their limbs tailed up, slaves that had had their limbs pulled out and put back together and then had been squashed in cages, body parts lying everywhere, organs lying everywhere. They were so horrified by the sight that they charged out the room and went to find Delphine, and Delphine had to flee the scene in her carriage and flee to the local shipyard. And she got on a ship and managed to escape to France. She wrote to her daughters a few years later asking if she could come back to New Orleans, but her daughters wrote in letters to her back like, "No mum, don't come back." And they did find a grave for Delphine in Paris, France, and apparently she died at the age of 62. Hopefully she went straight to hell. But a lot of people say that grave was just a fake grave, and saying that she never really went to Paris and that she actually went away and lived somewhere else under a false name. And as for the husband, no one really knows where he went. He disappeared because they were so distracted in getting like Delphine that he was able to escape without being noticed. So what happened after they left? Well, a lot of people wouldn't go near the house, they wouldn't touch it, even though it was this beautiful big house in the city centre. No one would go near it because everyone said that it was said to be haunted people would often claim that they'd see the ghost of the wee lassie that got chucked off the roof run off the roof and then fall off. And then people were also saying that they heard screaming from the house, and people were saying that it was the screaming of all the tortured spirits. But when a buyer finally bought the house in the 1930s, they were renovating the house and then discovered skeletons underneath the floorboards. And then it turns out that all the screaming in the house was actually slaves that Delphine had hidden under the floorboards, and they were screaming to be freed, but obviously they never did, and they died underneath those floorboards. And then the person that renovated that was renovating the house in the 1930s decided, when he seen all those skeletons in that house, that he decided to sell it and that he didn't want it anymore. Then the house was bought by Ricky Gervais, and we all know what a nutter he is, and he basically used it as a party house of his for years, and the community were against it, and they didn't want like a house that had like all that stuff going on it, like to be like some rich guy's party house. Like, they seen that as extremely disrespectful, so they started a protest against him using that house as a party house, and eventually he did leave the house, and then the house was bought by the local authorities and is now a museum that tells the story of Delphine and her husband. And you can go there, and if you go to the top basement room, you'll see a mannequin of a pretty young woman torturing what looks like a slave. Another story that is said about Delphine is that it's said that she was meant to have a devil child. However, this thing was later like disfigured. It turns out that she did have a baby with her first husband, and that the baby suffered with a skin condition, like a severe skin condition, and unfortunately the baby died. And they found the firefighters when they were putting the fire out of her house, when her house got burned. They found the body of a infant in the walls. So that's everything I've got to tell you. I know it's quite a horrific ordeal. I know it isn't half. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like this video, comment down below, subscribe, and don't forget to click that notification bell so that you'll be notified whenever my next video comes out. I really appreciate it whenever you guys subscribe, and it would mean the world to me. Also, I've got a Twitter account. My Twitter is in the link in the description, so please follow me on Twitter. Thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and see you in my next video. Bye.